you miss having two really good tight ends? And what would you give up to get it again? Dallas still stinks. Yo, by the way, King Dingbat here, and happy 4th of July to each and every one of you Dingbats out there. I hope you guys are having a great day. Hope you guys are enjoying your time with your family or whoever. Me, I'm hanging out with my family, just hanging out. We're having a good time. It's great. I hope you guys are having a great day as well. Now, we know training camp is coming soon. We know it's coming soon. And the question I have today is, would the Eagles make one more blockbuster trade? Could they make one more blockbuster trade before the season begins? And if they would they think, even remotely think, about upgrading or making a trade for a tight end? Now, we're going to get into it in a second, but before we do that, if you're new to the channel, make sure you like, make sure you subscribe for daily Eagles content. You don't want to miss anything that goes on here. And if you've been subscribed to the channel for a while, you know the deal. Double check, just double moonwalk check. Make sure you're still subscribed because YouTube acts all goofy and stuff. You know how it goes. Now, you're probably saying, Philly 500, how many beers have you drank today on the 4th of July? What are you drinking so early in the day already? Like, what are you talking about getting another tight end? We don't need a stud tight end. We've got Dallas Goedert. And I agree with you. We don't need a stud tight end. We got one in Dallas Goedert. I totally 100% agree with you. However, you do remember the last few years, though, when you had Ertz and when you had Goddard and what it was like when the Eagles could run that 12-man personnel with them two tight ends, how much they liked it. Would the Eagles consider bringing in another tight end? Now, I'm going to say this. Trading for a blockbuster tight end and bringing in somebody from free agency are two different things. They're two totally different things. I personally think the Eagles should look to bring in another tight end if possible, if they could get somebody for the right price. I don't think the Eagles need to go out and trade for one. But the reason I bring it up is because there was an article, and shout out to Brandon for sending this to me. And in this article, it was done by Mike Greger. He was talking about potential blockbuster trades to shake up the Eagles roster, right? And there was three that he mentioned. The first one he mentioned was Jalen Reagor for Clelin Ferrell. Now, we've talked about that trade before. I would be definitely open to trading Jalen Reagor for Ferrell if the Eagles could possibly do it. The other one was to trade Andre Dillard and Kevon Wallace to Cincinnati for Jesse Bates. I feel like that trade doesn't need to happen right now, not since you went out and signed Tart, okay? Which leaves us with one other trade that he was talking about. And it is an interesting trade nonetheless. Whether you think the Eagles should do it or shouldn't, but I thought it was interesting. They said trade running back Miles Sanders to Miami for Mike Gesicki. Okay, now Geskicki is a good young tight end. Mike Gesicki had 3.7% drop rate since entering the NFL in 2018, lowest among all tight ends. Very, very interesting. Okay, and here's the thing with Gesicki. Gesicki was franchise tagged by the Miami Dolphins. Okay, so he's franchise tagged, and we know Miami went out and they signed a bunch of guys, right? Tyreek Hill. They went out and spent a ton of money, okay? The question is, and a question this article asks is, would they be able to sign Gesicki to a long-term deal? Now, he's franchise tagged, and I think it's only like $10 million, just over $10 million, which really, for franchise tag, is not that bad, really. So the tight end position is really not that bad if you're franchising him. But if you're signing him long-term, it could be a problem, especially with a team like Miami that doesn't have a lot of money, okay? And look, listen, I like Gesicki a lot. I do, okay? Gesicki is 26 years old, 6'6", 247 pounds, went to Penn State, 73 catches last year, 780 yards, 2 touchdowns, and he averaged 10.7 yards a catch. So the kid is good. The kid's got talent. But would the Eagles really go out there, trade Miles Sanders, who's in the last year of his contract, who many people think the Eagles could possibly trade because he's in the last year of his contract, and then you have Professor Kenneth Gainwell, who some people think is going to take over the majority of the snaps this year, making Miles a guy that the Eagles could move. Now, I don't know if that's the case. And I got to tell you, my own personal feelings about this is I would not make this trade, okay? But I wanted to talk about it because I thought it was interesting. And here's what the article said. It said, why should the Eagles make this trade, right? Miles Sanders for Mike Gesicki. They said Sanders is eligible for an extension on his rookie deal as he enters his 4th season. There is no guarantee the Eagles will shell out big bucks for an injury-prone back with a history of drops and fumbles. When healthy, Sanders is explosive. 2,439 career rushing yards, average 5.1 yards per carry, but Philly drafted a guy, Kenny Gainwell, ready to slide into the starting spot. It could be argued his potential is higher than Miles Sanders. So trade Sanders for Gesicki and pair him with Dallas Goedert. 2 birds of a feather. Both guys are excellent blockers, run angry, and ooze athleticism. They are also fairly young players. Goddard 27, Gesicki 26. Those two could morph into the NFL's best tight end tandem. Now, I totally agree in that if the Eagles were to do this hypothetically, and this is hypothetical, right? This isn't, I'm not saying the Eagles should do this. But I do think, and I do feel that, yeah, they probably could be one of the better young tight end units in the National Football League. But how are you going to pay both guys? How are you going to pay? You're already paying Goddard. What are you going to pay Gesicki? So, I mean, he's making $10 million as a franchise tag this year. I think it would cost too much, okay? So, I wanted to kind of give my thoughts on this and this whole trade proposal. I don't like it because I don't want to give away Miles Sanders. I'm not ready to go out and give Miles Sanders up to Miami, okay? I think Kenneth Gainwell could be pretty good, but I still don't know. I still think you need to add another running back. I think you got Miles, Gainwell, and Ball Scott. I still think you need a big back, like a Jordan Howard type back. So I'm not going to go and trade Miles Sanders for a backup tight end. Now, I got to say this. Although I don't like this trade, I do think the Eagles need a second tight end. They need a second tight end. Because when you look at the tight end position, right, you have Dallas Goedert. He's a stud, number 1 tight end, clearly. But then who do you got after that? You have what? J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. I don't think he's going to make the team as a tight end. I can't put all my eggs in that basket. So to me, he's up in the air. Then you got, what, Jack Stoll. I like Jack Stoll, I guess. I mean, I think maybe he's like a role player, maybe like a 3rd, 4th tight end, if he even had a 4th tight end. Maybe a special teams guy. I don't really think he's the guy that you can say, hey, he's our number 2. Then you have Richard Rodgers, always getting hurt. They drafted this Calcaterra kid, right? I think that's how you say his last name. But, he could be the guy. He could be the second tight end that we're looking for. But he's an undrafted free agent. He hasn't come in, and he hasn't played it down yet. We don't know if he's even going to make this roster. So I would look at somebody. In free agency to come in as number 2 tight end. Then you get Calcaterra. He could be your 3rd tight end, or you could put him on the practice squad, stash him, whatever you got to do. But I think the Eagles do need a tight end. They don't need to trade Miles Sanders for Mike Gesicki. They do and should consider going out and getting a free agent tight end, okay? And they could do that. Now, it was Friday, I believe, there was an interesting article in Bleacher Report, and they were talking about free agents that teams should still consider, okay? And they had 3 for the Eagles. 2 of them were tight ends. The first was Kyle Rudolph. Now, Kyle Rudolph is, I think he could be a very steady, very stable, very decent number 2 tight end for the Eagles. I think he would be a decent addition, probably wouldn't cost you a lot of money, and I think he would be an upgrade to the rest of the roster at tight end except for Goddard. So he's somebody that I would consider. The other guy that I would consider that was on the list, and this is one I really like, okay? Eric Ebron. Eric Ebron could be the perfect second tight end for the Eagles. He played with Pittsburgh last year. I think he had a bit of a down year. I think he's 29. I want to say he's about 29 years old. But Eric Ebron is good. He's good. And if he came in, he would be one of the better number 2 tight ends in the National Football League. You wouldn't have to give up Miles Sanders or a trade for a Mike Gesicki kind of guy. And he would clearly be your number 2 guy. He was with Pittsburgh. I think he had a bit of a down year. But I think he's the perfect guy to bring in on a year, maybe 2 years, something like that, to be your number 2 tight end. Then you get Tyree Jackson, right, because I forgot all about him. He's coming off injury. Now, I think he has all the potential in the world. What I'm going to do with him is I'm going to find a reason to stash him on IR and give him more time, another year to learn in the system. And Calcaterra is a guy who you want on your practice squad or something like that. But Eric Ebron would be a great number 2 tight end for the Eagles. Probably wouldn't cost you a ton of money. Definitely not going to cost you trade capital. And I would rather have Miles Sanders on my roster, Miles Sanders and Eric Ebron. I'd rather have them 2 than Mike Gesicki. Because, like I said, you're going to pay him, $10 million as a backup tight end. You're going to eventually have to give him a long-term contract. You're already paying Dallas Goedert. I don't think there's a need for it. I think it's an interesting trade offer. Definitely an interesting trade offer. But it doesn't need to happen. I don't think it needs to happen. I am more intrigued by the idea of going out and signing Eric Ebron to a 1 or 2 year deal for the Eagles than I would be in going out and getting Mike Gesicki. Although I think it's a very interesting trade offer, I'm more interested in the free agents. What do you guys think about the tight end position? Do you think we need a number 2 tight end? Because I definitely do. I definitely do, and I don't think we should go break the bank or trade Miles Sanders for one. I think we should look to free agency and then, get a guy for a year or 2, let Tyree Jackson and Calcaterra develop and have your number 2 that way. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. With that said, take care. Talk to you later. Of course, don't be a dingbat. And remember, it's our vision. We're all just living in it. I just wanted to say again, I hope you guys are having a wonderful 4th of July. I hope you guys are having a great day. Me, to be honest, it's a little boring here. I think after I finish this video, I think I'm going to drive to Vegas. I think I'll drive to Vegas. What the hell? Let's go. Denzel Washington out.